That's right. It's the morning show here on ABC News Radio KMET 1490 AM. I'm happy to kind of have a follow-up of something that we had 2 years ago. I kid you not. Around 2 years ago, everybody was like COVID, 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 pandemic, pandemic, pandemic. And we had a very good interview and a very good chance to meet somebody who's actually doing something for the entire Jehovah's Witnesses. That's right. He, among many, put their heads together ahead of time and they said, wait a minute, what are we going to do ahead of time in order to get the word out about things coming that are good, not bad? Well, when the pandemic hit, I'm going to tell you right now, everybody was like, what do we do? But the witnesses, the Jehovah's Witnesses, which are found in actually Walk Hill, New York, and all around the world, in many countries, did something a lot of other entities actually did as well. Other religious agencies did follow in same suit. But I will say something very interesting happened here when we spoke to Robert J. Hendricks. And we were on a situation where for the very first time, and we got a lot of messages in our inbox over at KMET 1490 AM about the coverage of it. And the fact that it was the very first time that Jehovah's Witnesses, and if you have a family member or somebody that you know that is one, you know it's the very first time everything came to a standstill in one way, but not in another. What I mean by that is the district convention of Jehovah's Witnesses went all virtual online for the very first time. They canceled their in-person meetings 2 years ago because of the pandemic. They followed again what the U.S. said and other countries as well. They heeded the call. They did what was right. And joining us right now is Robert J. Hendricks. Good morning. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Aaron. It's great to be back. It was quite an interview last time. That went pretty viral around the globe after we talked the last time, and it was quite a pleasure to be with you.
Yeah, and I will say, it got all around the world. I mean, there were people in Europe and Australia, New Zealand, and even like parts where, and I will say there are some parts that are blocked off even from those that kind of go door to door or try to get the word out. We talked a little later that year about something that was happening in Russia and how there was a huge ban. But I want to go into something that's very important for people around the corner. Right now, we're at a very interesting time where people are asking, and the very common word is end days or end of days. But you have been kind of saying this for quite some time, maybe not you yourself, but others around you that also are Jehovah's Witnesses have said, well, last days are going to happen and critical times are hard to deal with. Can you explain that?
Well, certainly, Jehovah's Witnesses have really pointed to the Bible to talk about how things really wouldn't get better. It's sad for us to watch as this world goes into such division and such pain. It's sad for us to be living through pandemics and living through this divisiveness and the lack of peace among people. But we recognize what Jesus said. He said, when these things start to occur, lift your heads up because your deliverance is near. And he was talking to all those who follow Christ. He was talking to those who are really putting their hope in God's kingdom rather than in the kingdoms of this world. And so as sad as it is, as tragic, see, we're not immune to what's happening. Our families are affected. Our children are affected. Our communities are affected. We, as most people know in California, there's 200,000 witnesses in California, more than 200,000. Most people know somebody who's a witness. They work beside them. They use them as a contractor. They may live next door to them. And they know, we know, we're all in it together. We're all dealing with the pandemic together. And so we need a common solution. And that's really the key. And that's what we try to look to one source, God's Word, the Bible, to see where that common solution is. And it is the kingdom. And the kingdom can have real benefits even today, which is what the highlight will be of our regional convention this year, which starts in July and is being viewed globally in more than 500 languages over the course of 6 weekends.
Well, and I'm glad you're mentioning that because I've seen a lot of people, including family members, kind of say the sad fact of, is it even worth living? And they may not say it outright, but when you talk about like, okay, go get tested and stay alive and, get through it all, financially people are hurting. People are starting to talk about shortage of food. I know in Europe and other parts of the world, they're starting to talk about that. This is something, again, that has been kind of discussed, but people's, like, their emotions are kind of the opposite of what they were 2 years ago. Now they're all, honestly, people I've spoken to that are really very, like, and I hate to say this, but very, like, front with their emotions, kind of are like, is it worth staying alive? And I don't think they ask that outright, but if they have hope, then it's like, let's get through it, and let's get through it together. And that's something that you've been saying for quite some time, right?
Well, absolutely. And really, the emotions that we have, again, they're not singular to just everybody else. We have those emotions too. Job, one of the most faithful men in the Bible, said to God, "Oh, in the grave is where you could conceal me. Would you conceal me in the grave?" The King David, the psalmist, in Psalm 94, says, "How long, O God?" And Habakkuk says the same thing. Jonah wanted to die. That's how much these emotions really rip at the hearts of faithful, loyal, good people. And so everybody is being affected in different ways. And we need that common solution. The common solution for us has always been the kingdom. We've always pointed to the kingdom, which has helped us, Aaron, to stay away from trying to solve things in a small way, because that's what's going to solve everything in the big way. But in the meantime, as our regional convention talks about, we need peace. And we can't make peace globally. We don't have that ability as individuals. So we start one person at a time. We start one family at a time. We start one congregation at a time. And that's what this regional convention is all about: pursuing peace in ourselves, first of all, really learning how to love, learning how love leads to inner peace and peace with others, and how the Bible's advice for marriage mates, for families, for parents can be a roadmap to family peace. But we're going to be talking about peace with God, being peacemakers with others, and then having peace also with God, and finally being able to be his friend and have that friendship that feels we have an inner peace, a peace that can't be robbed from us. You see, the peace that God gives is an aspect of the fruit of his Spirit. And when we have his Spirit in our life, that peace can't be robbed from us, no matter what externally is going on. And so that's why you find many Jehovah's Witnesses who not only look at peace when they're in their ministry, but also feel at peace, even though so much in this world is trying to rob that peace.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that, because it's almost like people are going next level. And as an organization, as Jehovah's Witnesses, again, I have seen some things come against people. I mean, now we're at a time where we hear the big name, the R word, right? Russia. And we hear, okay, Russia went and invaded Ukraine, and the people of Ukraine are trying to be safe. They've been bombed left and right, and literally all the way, like, on the east side and on the middle. And then, they, like, bombed several power plants. My point is this: Jehovah's Witnesses have actually kind of been already, in a way, like, trying to fight a legal fight, which I will say in some way is good, and it's like a victory against just stuff that are happening that are bad. And I know there was a recent news about someone who, again, we covered later that year, Christensen. Can you kind of allude to that?
Well, certainly, and I really give it to you, Darren, because you have done your research about our organization, and it's true that we have, as an organization, been very active in the courts, not because we're litigious, but because God told us to do something. He told us to worship together. He told us to preach the good news. And when laws are in place that affect that, we're going to take those laws and challenge them in the highest court. So in the United States, we have 50 Supreme Court victories that have established our faith based on First Amendment jurisprudence. We have been a major factor in freedom of religion, freedom of the press, freedom of speech, and around the world. Just recently in the European High Court, European Court of Human Rights, Russia was penalized, and a negative decision came down against Russia that has really vindicated our brothers and sisters there. Because, as you know, in that country, our assets have been confiscated. We have been banned. Even our Bible has been banned. And of course, the Bible, it's the Bible. We call it our Bible. It's simply a translation of the Bible that side by side is just like the King James, or just like the Revised Standard Version. And then we had our brother Christensen, whose 5 years of imprisonment were finally ended, and he went back to his home, to his wife, and that was a victory. It was a victory for this reason, not because we got him out early, because we didn't. In fact, his sentence was extended, but because, like Jesus, he was victorious over that tyranny, and he comes out not just feeling like he endured, but feeling like he prevailed with God's help, feeling stronger than he would have if he had not gone through this incident. And as painful as it was, you'll see that too. If you go to jw.org and you go to the latest governing body update of Jehovah's Witnesses, you'll see an interview with him, and also an interview with two of our brothers in Russia who were in prison for a protracted period of time. And all of them, to a man, said, this ended up being a blessing. And that's just the way it is. As difficult as it is, as we can't imagine it ourselves, feeling like we're going to be rotting in prison, not being able to have our freedom. But those brothers turned it into a positive with the help of their faith.
Well, and I will say this to the general public, sometimes you say it in a way, and to any member of Jehovah's Witnesses, it's very like, yeah, we know exactly what we're talking about. But to the general public, let me just kind of break it down for you. Imagine reading a Bible, and then because you're reading a Bible, the United States of America says you go to prison. Now, thank God we're not there here, right, in the United States. I'm in California, and you're there in New York, right? And we are kind of in a good land for now. But if they did that all of a sudden, it would be weird for the majority of Christian or anybody with a holy book. I mean, I think of Muslim, and I think the Quran, and I think any book that is a translation of a book. Kind of, you mentioned King James Version. I think the Douay Version. I don't know how many different translations there are of the Bible, or the Hebrew and or the Greek. But at the end of the day, it's weird to have to go to prison just for owning one, and especially only reading the official word of the Bible, which according to Russia, and I think the Greek Orthodox Church, kind of were kind of hand in hand in kind of making it so that any other faith, especially those of Jehovah's Witnesses who go door to door, or I should say went door to door, trying to get the word out about the Bible, which I believe that's actually a scripture where Jesus said, "Go therefore," right?
Matthew 28, 19, and 20. But it's interesting, though, Aaron, you say that about this country. And, of course, we have freedoms, and we're very thankful for those freedoms. But it was just a little over 100 years ago that those who were taking the lead in the work of Jehovah's Witnesses were all put in federal prison. It was just 80 years ago that regularly our brothers and sisters going out and visiting people were put in prison. And it was just 60 years ago that our children were being suspended from school as a result, or 60 years ago, maybe it's 70 now, it was the 50s, the 40s, and the 50s, when our children were being suspended and expelled from school, denied an education because they wouldn't salute the flag, even though they stood during the flag salute and were respectful. All of that was taken care of through the United States Supreme Court. All of it had to be adjudicated. These rulings have provided us with the freedom of worship. But in 1998, a village in this country, in the village of Stratton, Ohio, made it a criminal offense to go to your neighbor and knock on his door without asking the mayor. Now imagine that, living in a community where to go across to your neighbor, knock on his door and talk about garbage pickup, or talk about your faith, or talk about an environmental issue, and you could be actually put in jail or fined criminally as a result of that. That's what happened, and the target was, at the time, Jehovah's Witnesses. United States Supreme Court, in fact, on June 17th, 2002, 20 years ago, this June 17th, ruled in a historic ruling, 8-1, and said that that law was unconstitutional, and by the way, it was offensive. And it took many of the precedent-setting cases of the 30s and 40s, and it took all of that First Amendment, that treasure trove of First Amendment jurisprudence, and it put it in a 21st century context. And it renewed the rights of not only Jehovah's Witnesses, but it said those rights are relevant today. And in fact, even quoted many of those cases right within the Stratton decision. So that's why we're looking back on that day as a very special day for us as an organization, and for many. We're doing a special program with the Religious Freedom Clinic at Harvard Law School on that same day, June 17th, 2022. And we're going to look back on this case and what a danger that it posed to this country, this community, to us as Jehovah's Witnesses. And by overturning that with an 8-1 decision of the United States Supreme Court, how that had a great effect not only on Jehovah's Witnesses, but on all.
Well, and I imagine, again, these are the type of legal things that, as a organization, you have to go at it. I will say, it came up with my family. Those that know our last time we spoke, I talked about my mom and the situation with that, but I didn't talk about my sister's situation and the liaison committee, which is a very good, organized, very educated when it comes to like the science of COVID or the science of being healthy or the science of, things to stay alive. When somebody's in the hospital, and many have been in the hospital, I know the numbers, you keep a very big tally. And I say this to other organizations, whether they be, faith-based or not, be aware of your members, because if something happens, what does Jehovah's Witnesses do for those that they know?
Well, because we're in such small congregations, Aaron, we keep them small purposely, because really they're pastoral units. We have 1.3 million congregants in the United States, more than 1.5 million who attend our meetings. And those meetings are relatively small. And the congregations range from anywhere 75 to 150, typically right within that range. And then they're broken up into smaller pastoral groups that have those taking the lead, and especially in the pandemic, who were in contact during this pandemic, especially in the beginning, on a weekly basis. And so we were making sure they were okay, they had what they needed. Had they contracted COVID, they were being careful. Of course, in March 20th, 2020, we shut down all our meetings in public ministry, so we didn't see each other face to face, but we were in touch with each other on a weekly basis. And that kind of shepherding, that kind of pastoring, is not seen in many places, because the economics of religion now is big. Super churches. Many people would rather go to a place where they're not known. They could just attend, and we get that. We understand that. But these smaller groups, these smaller congregations, have really helped us to help one another, because congregations really are interdependent units. And we don't look at ourselves as just coming to church on a Sunday, filling a pew and leaving. We look at ourselves as a spiritual family, and families take care of one another. At least healthy spiritual families do.
I'm glad you said that. I know for my mom, she was not like, look, I will say this, and I talk to a lot of people, all around the world. Our show sometimes reaches in areas like the Philippines, who just had a major volcano. I know, again, you're looking at that very closely, because, again, back to areas that you have what you call a brother or sister, which in essence everybody's a brother or sister, right? Of the faith, right? Is actually in some way or form needing help. And during our time here in the U.S., again, we don't think about volcanoes so much, but we do think about natural disasters. I know since Katrina and other times before and since, you have had a huge impact on not just those that are of the faith, but also those that are not of the faith, helping lend a hand. Kind of like organizations that are out there like Red Cross, or I can think of a number of them that organize to help people out, right?
Well, yeah, there's no doubt we have to help each other out. We have to help our neighbors out. It's our responsibility. Jesus said it. The two greatest commandments: love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. And love neighbor doesn't just include the ones in your household. It includes your extended family. And while we can't take care of everybody, and we don't pretend to, we do mobilize during natural disasters. The number of natural disasters in California, the wildfires, the landslides. We had a volcano just a little over a year ago in St. Vincent. We had to bring our friends off of the island and make sure that they had a place in another country. We had to actually evacuate them from a country, which I don't know has ever been done by our organization before. And yes, these disaster relief committees, humanitarian relief committees that are set up in California and other places, even during COVID, that distributed food during COVID, that were able to respond to the medical needs. You know that we weren't going to doctors because we were afraid, but we provided a telemed solution for many of our members. We tracked all of the hospital beds in the branch territory in the United States, and we looked at where, if our congregant got sick, where would we direct them, so that we had real-time data. And that's the kind of personal attention that this organization has given to its people. And it's amazing because, you go to a Kingdom Hall and there's no collection plate. In fact, we haven't even been able to go to a Kingdom Hall, right? Until just a few weeks ago. And,
yeah. And many are on Zoom still, right?
Donations. I'm sorry?
And many are still on Zoom, right? So it's hard to collect right there. It's like, where's the donate button? You know what I mean?
It's just amazing to me that the currency of this organization, without question in my mind, and I've been doing this a long time. I grew up as a witness, was baptized at 15 years old, but I've been in a congregation ever since I was a child. The currency of this organization is God's Spirit. That's what makes things work, because it couldn't work any other way. We have 27 disaster relief committees going on right now in Ukraine. We have a disaster relief committee right here in the United States that's caring for Ukrainian and Russian refugees, finding a place for them, getting them started on their feet so that they are self-sustaining, making sure that somebody is there to sponsor them and pick them up from the airport when they're coming in or at the border. I mean, this is extraordinary. What other group, forget about religious group, but what other global organization is doing this? And it's a testimony really to the kingdom, which is in place and which has its manifestation right now in the good works being done on this earth, even though it hasn't taken over this earth yet, obviously.
Well, and I appreciate what you say. Again, there's a lot of things that are happening around the world, and as I say to people, watch world news, not local news, and then you'll understand everything we're saying is actually true. Volcanoes, I think there were a maximum of 52 at one time, and again, to hear that, again, you did the right thing to help the people out in the area is very important. Sometimes people look to the government to fix things, and I say, hey, look to your local, right? Those that care about you. If you go and go, worship in some way or go to a church, make sure that your members know who you are, why you're doing what you're doing, and then how to check in on you. Make sure to have emergency contacts from out of the area in the event you have an emergency, and then follow up with one another, especially during COVID. A lot of people, we've had about 1.3 million deaths here in the U.S. It's about 6 million around the world. And again, around the world, how many members are of those of Jehovah's Witnesses? And I believe you just had a memorial, or what they call the Lord's Evening meal. Many call that the Passover meal. But how many attended there?
Well, over 20 million, no doubt. I think last year it was upwards of 22 million. So we don't have the numbers yet this year. We suspect they'll be very similar. Of course, we have 8.6 million Jehovah's Witnesses around the world. 200,000, 203,000 or so in California, in 239 different countries. And so we are a global brotherhood, a global organization. And I want to just make sure that we also say that we feel very strongly and are very appreciative of the government. And we can't replace the government. We can't replace the resources that a government can give. However, there are times, especially in the first 72 hours to a week of a disaster, which is key to the survival of somebody in a serious disaster, like the tornadoes, the derechos that have happened over the last few years, earthquakes in Puerto Rico, the Gulf storms. It's that 72-hour period that's key, and that's where, number one, we make sure that our folks, our congregants are prepared with a go bag, prepared to know where to go and when to go, just as you said. And secondly, that we know where they are, so that if they need help, we can care for them, because those critical first few days will mean perhaps the rest of their life.
I'm glad you said that, and I appreciate, again, coming up around the corner, everybody could tune in virtually online from anywhere you have an online connection, or you can reach out if you have a question. Again, it's all available on jw.org. I thank you again for spending time with us. Thank you for the update on that very pivotal moment in 2020 when everything went, right? Like nothing went good in that year, right?
Well, nothing went good, but I will say this, that a lot came out of it as good. We're a different organization, and we recognize that not everybody is ready to come back to the Kingdom Hall, but we now have the resources to have hybrid meetings, to have a hybrid ministry, which we really didn't even contemplate before. And so we have that globally now, and I think as a result, we're able to serve not only our congregants better, but all those who might be interested in visiting us.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that, because it's so important for people that maybe, because I'm not going to lie, I've heard some jokes where people go, where are those people that come to our door that we used to run away from? You know what I mean? And people are like, where did they go? But I know you're going to be in the public streets again. You're not going door to door just yet. We're waiting on that. But I guess the point is, it's nice to have you guys back in a good way and safe. Thank you for doing what you do. I always say from my heart to all of you, thank you for taking care of my mom and take care of my sister and others, because I have a lot of friends. I haven't reached out to them as of yet, but I always wonder, how are they doing? And I know you always take care of those. And again, thank you for doing everything you can. And again, for those of you tuning in, make sure to go visit jw.org. Remember, they have hybrid meetings. Do you guys give a link out to maybe this Sunday?
Well, we sure would give a link out, but they need to find their local congregation, and which they can do on jw.org, find a local meeting. And once they put in their information where they are, they'll come up with a bunch of different phone numbers. They can call and get their local link. We'd rather somebody go locally than somebody go across the world, because we can care for them, not only in our ministry, but also when something like a natural disaster happens.
Yeah, it's called follow-up. Like, if my mom went to Florida, she could visit it online. She's done that, but she stays local. That way, get to check in on her. So, again, from my heart to all of those of you there in New York and around the world, thank you for doing everything you're doing, and keep it going.
Thank you, Aaron. Appreciate it.
All right. We got to take a quick break. After these messages, we got more. Stay tuned and download our app. It's free at KMET 1490 AM. And don't forget, JW actually has their own app, jw.org. Just check it out. Okay, people, we'll be right back right after these messages. Stay tuned.